Oh.
And hello, welcome to the inaugural, very much the beta. It's MMOBuff.TV, and I'm joined here by my glorious co-hosts. We have Pseudo. Say hello, Pseudo. And Pseudo is joined by Kei.
Hey, everyone.
And the dulcet tones of Gazimoff.
Hi, everyone.
And we're going to be here to chat every Monday night about MMOs, about online gaming, and about a host of topics in and around that. But as you know, it's been Gamescom. And whilst it might be PAX, that's going to be a topic for a little later. So let's talk about what happened at Gamescom. We're all back, and the first thing to know about Gamescom is we all end up with very, very sore feet indeed. Some of you might not be aware, it's a multitude of halls, there's a lot of distance to be covered, and anyone that's really braved the 340,000 people that pass through those doorways has probably got a good sense of what we're all talking about. But the first thing we needed to establish really was, well, who has the most painful feet after a week and a bit of Gamescom? Pseudo, I think we need to start with you. Perhaps say hi, tell people while you're here, and then talk about your feet. Betas are fantastic, so we're going to drop off and we're going to go to Kai.
Oh, I definitely think I have painful feet. I had to go to Gamescom and I was working on the Tuesday and the Wednesday and the Thursday, and then I flew home, and then I went to Insomnia, and then I was at Insomnia from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and went home Monday. It was a bit crazy. My feet are stubs. Nubby stubs now.
That sounds rather painful. That's definitely a good candidate for the most painful feet of all. So we're moving on from Kai's nubby stubs to Gazimoff.
Well, I was around Gamescom and I was there for 4 days in total, the 3 main business days and like a half a day either side. And it was knackering. It was so tiring. Even though I tried to keep myself to the business centre wherever possible, you end up doing this whole trek wading through thousands of people just to try and get back and forth between the two ends of this huge convention. So, yeah, massive.
And has Pseudo rejoined us yet?
I have, actually. It's by magic I have appeared, and I'm probably a little loud, so let me fix that. Hi, everybody. Oh, is it my turn to complain about my feet?
It is.
It is.
Oh, right. Okay, so let's see. My traveling started Sunday night before Gamescom and didn't end for a week and 3 days afterwards, in which case I was on my feet entirely. I have blisters.
Blisters can be problematic, but I'm afraid I've got you all. Because whereas I had to go on the amazing coach journey to Cologne and back, and we had to traverse the halls and the business centre and the interviews, and not to mention the walking around all evening to the bars and other business venues in and around Cologne, we went and had a chance to play the fantastic Eve Valkyrie game. And whilst doing this, I got defeated. So clearly I have the sorest feet of all. And on that...
Yeah,
on that
starting
bombshell.
out with a pun.
Oh, we like puns, but we do get a little more serious as well. Perhaps we can do a quick round robin here and let people introduce themselves, say why they're here and what they're all about. Gazimoff, let's listen to your dulcet tones one more.
Okay, so my name is Gazimoff, otherwise known as Gareth Harmer. I am currently senior contributing editor at Zam.com. Been playing MMOs for the past 10 years, all flavours and all formats and all types and stuff like that. Started off on an ancient game called Horizons Empire Vystaria, and currently playing, too many MMOs to count. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
And let's take that one across to Pseudo.
Playing MMOs for over a decade. Okay, let's take that back a little bit. I've been playing them since I learned about computers and mud. I am currently reinstalling a lot of MMOs because I'm going through a dry spell. with MMOs, which is kind of sad. And I'm hoping that having taken a break, that'll get sorted. I myself am just happen to be a host here at MMOBuff.TV, but I'm also the community manager. So if you want to get in touch with me to get yourself heard, come to me. So, yeah.
And let's pass that baton to Kai, who I'm sure you all know with her shockingly pink hair, which contrasts really well with those nice shiny Razer headphones you have there.
Well, yeah, for those who don't know, my name is Kai, and I have a YouTube channel, which is Kai Dream, and I'm the gaming editor and video producer for Hardware Heaven. I've been playing MMOs since I was about 17, so gosh, that's like 6 years now, and I am as well going through a bit of a dry spell, trying to hop around things, but I'm just waiting to settle my little spaceship on Nexus, and yeah, we'll see where it goes from there.
And indeed, I'm another one that's been playing, well, MMOs and nothing but the MMO, really, for the past 12 plus years in various bits and pieces. So who is the guy in the stripy shirt? Well, I'm lucky enough to run around with a guild called Enigma, and I'm lucky enough to have some strong opinions on MMOs. There are a bunch out there at the moment, and some of them we're going to be talking about. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about Gamescom overall. It's a huge event. For those that haven't seen it, the scale is really rather difficult to comprehend. It's a strange mix between queuing for rides at Disneyland and going to a rock concert. It's a strange atmosphere, and it's offset by the hidden side of Gamescom. There's this wonderful press and business area, and it's not all cognac cabinets and sofas. It's still a horde and a hustle and bustle of people, usually trying to get from one end of the building to another to hit 20-minute time slots. So I thought perhaps it might be interesting to talk for a little bit about what the hidden side of Gamescom looks like before we go back to the show floor. Who wants to jump in on that particular topic?
I'm happy to start. I spent literally 90% of my Gamescom time in the business area, and the only difference really for me between the business area and the main show floor is that you just have less people trying to hand you stuff as you're walking around. It's still quite busy, and there's still a lot of people, and you're still rushing around, but you know, it's a lot more relaxing, and you don't have to worry about having to carry loads of flyers everywhere or say no to booth babes, and there's just a lot more of a serious air about it, but you still can have a lot of fun. But and it's not as pretty. A lot of it is just kind of white and stuff, so it's not that exciting. Don't worry about it.
What's your experience been, Gazimov?
I would say it's pretty similar to Kairi. You end up with this kind of, almost like a kind of mouse maze you're walking through with a load of white cubicles everywhere. And you'd think it would be a little quieter and stuff like that. And sure, you don't get people pumping out massive amounts of dubstep. I'm looking at you, NVIDIA booth. But you kind of get this huge echo effect with everyone having business conversations and interviews and stuff like that going around the entire tin room. And it's like, I'm trying to record something, and there's so much background noise, I'm getting drowned out here. But I don't know what it would be like without having that kind of small bit of sanctuary there, because I've kind of went out into the main Gamescom floor area every so often, and it would be like you'd almost feel like you have to crowd surf just to get from one end of the building to the other. It's just crazy.
What's your experience, Pseudo? I know you, like myself, just made the transition from avid gamer into the work world of gaming. How did you find it?
Yeah. It was rather interesting. I think the biggest difference for me from the game floor to this mouse maze, as in my opinion is so aptly named and defined by Gazi here, is the fact that when you go to look for a particular game, you're not looking for the game. You are actually looking for either the PR company or the publisher, and you find yourself kind of going, am I in the right part of the building? I think so. And then you find yourself making your way through going, oh, well, I haven't heard about this game, which, for example, that one game that we ran across from China. And then finding our way through, and it's like, wow, there's so much more than I expected. And it's granted, we represent MMOs, but there's just so much more beyond that. However, there is really only one really nice slice about it. And, it was kind of interesting to me to see that there was a section where you could walk in, sit down, and pay someone to give you a massage from head to the bottom of your back. I didn't participate in this. I was too busy doing stuff. But it was kind of interesting to see that was an option there. But yeah, it was just a very big difference between, hey, I know what game I want to see. There's this giant logo for, WildStar or something. And then turning around and going, where are we supposed to go? So, yeah. What about you, Mizpah?
Well, it's an interesting rat race. A lot of the time that we're running around at Gamescom, we're really thinking about where do we have to be, who do we have to speak to. Oh, there's an interview in half an hour. Do we have the questions lined up? What prep do we need to do? And you're so focused on being in the moment and what you're actually trying to do, the wider picture gets lost, and you're concentrating on item to item to item as you run around. The most amazing thing to me about Gamescom is simply the collective effort put into the experience by all parties. So much work goes into capturing the hearts and minds of people during that small window, that so many of the right people are there, there's so much of the right information, so much PR gears up to that moment. And it's very much an information overload. How do you sort it all? But the real nice thing about having so much information is you can pick and choose what you need to look at, what you want to experience and talk about. And we found, very much from the MMO buff perspective, if you come with the right questions and the right approach, it's surprising how much information you can get out of people. And that gives me probably an interesting segue to talk about the most important thing of all, and that is the MMOs. That is the games, because ultimately, that's what we're all here for. So, where shall we start? There are some huge titles in the up-and-coming mix. There's a ton of information in the ongoing. Blizzard had a huge presence there. EQ Next captured people's attention in a big way, coming off the back of the announcements last August. WildStar rolled out some new surprises. There's a lot going on. Let's pick a topic, guys, and let's dive in. Where shall we start? Kai, you get to randomise the game we talk about.
Randomise the game? Oh. I think we should talk about EQ Next.
EQ Next is the topic then. It's this new shiny thing full of potential, but what's it actually going to deliver? And is the potential hype, or is it real? We had a great interview. Hopefully some of you have seen it. If not, you need to go to the channel and take a look. But before we go on about that, Gazimov, your thoughts from someone that knows the ins and outs of these MMOs.
Okay, so I will be honest with you. I'm on the fence about EQ Next. I think technologically it's a marvellous thing with what they're trying to do, having a world built of voxels and being a little bit different about that and really trying to push the genre in a different direction. And I give them a huge amount of kudos for doing that. However, I can't help but think that with the heavy reliance on a kind of story bricks-based AI, that it's going to kind of lose that heroic sense of adventure that you get. Now, I completely understand their take where they're saying that they want to have AI controlling that and then people to contribute to the story by grouping up and having their own kind of input into that, and for the simulation to react around to them. I can see their point to an extent, but I also think that only works when you've got a high proportion of numbers to actually gear up and drive things forward. And when you're dealing with an MMO server that's like 20,000, 30,000 players, top end, you won't really get that. So I think that I remain to be convinced on it. I think that there's some great technology there. And I have a sneaking suspicion that Landmark, their kind of world-building thing, which is coming out this winter, might end up being more popular than actual EverQuest Next, purely because it will appeal to that whole Minecraft crowd. But, yeah, that's my thoughts.
I
on
noted
it.
in the channel, actually, someone just made a comment, and I'm going to have to scan back to pick up the name. But someone made a comment, something along the lines of Minecraft on steroids. Indeed, Minecraft is a word you hear come up straight away when you mention Landmark. But they've done something really interesting from a business perspective, to me. You've always got the issue of, we can be content locusts in MMOs. Okay, sandboxes bring their own twist on the environment. You can actually have emergent content and create your own experiences, if that comes together with that mindset. But a constant challenge is, how do you create enough content? And it goes beyond that. How do you keep pace with simple things like art assets and models and engineering time and testing time to keep up with that content flow? We're seeing a ton of stuff to do with how much content needs to come out in what timescale and player expectations. People like Guild Wars have set the bar quite high in the EU market, and it's been set quite high in the Asian market for quite a while to do with speed of content update. And of course, speed does not always equate to quality. But to what degree are they actually managing to solve some of these problems by being really innovative in allowing the player community not only to create content, but go, hey, I built that, and feel great about having done so, not to mention monetizing it?
Well, before going into that particular thing, I kind of want to go back to what you said, Ghazi. I mean, when you are talking about an AI on a server that is impacting everything, let's put the orcs on the road and let them figure out whether they want to stay on that road or say move to the next road based on what their AI likes and dislikes are. However, maybe they're going to plan to take it the same model that, say, Eve has and just throw everybody onto the same server and just say, populate at whim. And maybe that's where they're going to find the strength for their AI. Because if you start doing proper separations where you only get that 20,000, I mean, there are going to be parts of a world that are going to be completely empty and barren. But if you just throw everybody into the same location, you might have the ability to have more of an impact on the AI. So I just kind of wanted to throw that in there before we went further on there.
So, Kai, your thoughts? Do we think the AI will deliver the promises, the pictures that people are painting in their heads about this incredible AI? And do you think they do anything great with the business model?
In my opinion, relying a lot of the chunk of content of your game on AI is always a bad idea. AI has constantly let us down, whether it's a companion in a campaign of a game, or whether it's in a MMO where you're doing an escort quest, or you've got a NPC in one of the raids that you're having to keep alive. They always let us down, they always fail, and they always kind of make it a little bit game breaking. So to have a big chunk of your game based on whether AI decide to stay in one area or move to a different area, I think is a little bit risky. But no one's really tried it before, so who knows, they could shock us. But I think if it doesn't work, then a lot of people will just be like, on to the next. Hopefully not EQ next.
Well, you're giving me nightmares now, because all I can think of is a certain Legolas in a certain game and trying to follow him on an escort quest. Please don't make me go there.
Well, to be fair, I mean, when you're talking escort quests and things like that, it's not so much AI so much as a scripted response. Whereas in their particular case, they're not saying, hey, we want to get from point A to point B, and if a fight ensues, walk up without any armor and your bandages around your chest and just hit them, because that makes so much sense in an escort quest when they're injured. Or in the case where you have an AI where they're sitting there going, hey, I don't like guards, I don't like cities, but I like travelers and sparse travelers. And all of a sudden the AI now actually has something to interact with other than just simply script A says walk forward to point B. Turn around, stop, make the party wait for 30 minutes, and then continue. Mm-hmm. So that's going to have an impact on, the actual gameplay. I'm not exactly certain, thinking back through the games, if I've ever actually seen proper AI in an MMO. Period.
Yeah, not in an MMO. It's always been, like you said, it's been like some sort of scripted version of AI. But I think my point of view is quite pessimistic. I think if they can't even get like the scripted stuff right in most games, then like the actual complicated artificial intelligence might be quite difficult. But who knows? We'll see.
And I'm going to pin my colours to the optimist mask, I think, here for a moment. Who knows what they'll actually deliver, but conceptually I find it really enticing. If the tech has moved on to allow them to deliver, I'll be jumping up and down saying that's a great thing. But I think it's years down the line, and there's a long, long way to go. So cautiously optimistic is probably my take on the end player experience.
I'm just worried that it's going to get to the point where you group up with a bunch of people just because you can, like your guilds, because you want to hang out with them. But the AI is all, oh no, there's too many, must run away. And then you actually have to start taking that MMO experience and breaking it down to the little people. You can only go in a group of 5 or, what have you. I just hope they don't screw that side up because MMOs are supposed to be social. I mean, what's the point of playing an MMO if you're not going to interact with the other people? We're talking massive multiplayer situations here. So I'm skeptical, I'm hesitant, but at the same time, a big part of EQ Next is about pure exploration. So,
yeah.
Let's touch and we'll bounce over to you, Gazimov, on what we do know about the game. There's some new tidbits that have emerged. Can we bullet point the new information that's come out in the last month or so?
Well, in terms of what they're mainly looking at doing, it was mainly surrounding things like they want to have this. It's going to be multiple server. We know that much. So they're not going to be following the EVE model of single server. They're going to be pushing out Landmark winter of this year, and that's going to contain a whole barrel load of kind of world building features. And it's mainly Landmark that they're pushing at the moment. I think that the main issue that that's kind of cropped up with it is that they're kind of expecting players to do a lot of heavy lifting as well. So if, for example, rather than trying to build a Mad God's Temple themselves, this is the kind of example they put out, they're going to get players in Landmark to create different versions of temples. And then they're going to get them to rank them up and down, kind of like a Reddit-style thing. And they'll pick which one, or pick a couple of the best ones to put into the actual full game. I'm kind of cautious about the amount of heavy lifting that they're expecting players to do, because there's that bit. There's also things like they want to use the Player Studio, which is something they've had in EverQuest 2 and PlanetSide 2 and stuff like that, where they get players to generate art assets and models and stuff, and they'll pick the best ones of those and put them on their store to put out there as well. And then they've got this whole AI thing that we've talked about already. So it's a case of, okay, you're going to have an AI, you're going to expect players to do a fair chunk of the models, and you're expecting players to do most of the stuff that you're going to sell. What are you guys going to be building? Like, that's my kind of question. And Kyrie will be able to tell much more about this than I am, because she's so heavily immersed in the whole Minecraft series. I think that's... I can see the compulsion there, but I'm interested to get Kyrie's take as a kind of veteran Minecraft player as to whether she thinks that EQN's actually got any legs to it.
People do love building things, and, player-created content, and, even from just watching the pack stream, I know we're not talking too much about it, but people's reaction to WildStar Housing, for example, people love it, but I'm not sure people love doing it for other people. They like doing it for themselves. They like to have their house that they can show off and be like, this is what I made, everyone, kind of revel in my awesome. I don't think people like creating stuff as much just for games companies just to use and put in the game. I mean, at first it'd be pretty cool to be like, hey, I helped develop this game, but I think after a while it will just get old news and people will actually just want to play the game. But if someone's a super, super big EQ fan, then before the game comes out, then being able to build stuff to actually put in the game is pretty exciting. But even I think the Minecraft audience would actually prefer just to play it rather than just keep building stuff for the dev team to use.
As a side note, with that kind of focus, like you were saying, some people are more focused on building that shiny new, ooh, look, I built this thing for a game company or what have you. Mm-hmm. I remember very distinctly back in Star Wars Galaxies, there were a large portion, at least on the server that I was on, that was all about, let me pimp up your home, not my home, your home, and I'll build everything. I mean, I remember having a carousel and a fish tank all along the back of my wall, just created by somebody else, and you just paid them, they came in, they did some playing. I mean, that's even been discussed with WildStar. People saying, I'm more interested in going in and decorating people's homes than I am in actually, say, leveling up and playing the game. I want to be that creative genius behind it. So I think EQ's tapping into that. What I'm actually wondering now, because of some of the things that were revealed in the interview that we had, I'm really wondering if we're going to find a situation where a game company is going to bring out 2 MMOs, because they've already stated Landmark is an MMO. It was developed as a tool, but it's turned into its own MMO. If it's actually going to outshine EQ Next. You know, where you're going to have a situation where all of a sudden Landmark is the MMO, whereas EQ Next alone is just not popular.
Okay. Well, much remains to be seen on that one, and time will tell as we go on. But before we go too far back into EQ Next, one important announcement. Yes, indeed, this is aimed at Velnox as I move my mouth away from the mic. That chair was indeed stolen from the Starship Enterprise. You are quite correct. And coming back to reality, we're going to have an EQ Next Focus show at some point in the near future. And I'll let a small reveal out the bag. Should the stars align, we're going to be lucky enough to have Dave Georgeson on the show. So we will be announcing that in the near future. Keep your eyes peeled. But it's time for a change of topic. There's a lot of Gamescom to cover, but I think there's one more game we probably do want to cover in a little bit of depth before hitting the whole gamut of the show. And it's WildStar. Kai, tell us about WildStar.
Oh god, there's so much to say. So WildStar is a new MMO currently in development and closed beta by Carbine Studios, and it's being published by NCSoft. It's very much a space kind of fantasy style MMO in the sense that nothing is quite realistic, but it's not space in the sense that like Star Wars or Star Trek is. It's a lot more kind of fantasy space. There are 8 classes, 6 of which have been announced, if I'm counting correctly, and there are 2 factions, and there are 6 races, all of which have been announced now. So there's quite a lot. It's very kind of in the style that WoW was originally, in the sense that there are 2 factions opposing against each other, where you can have PvP. There is going to be 40-man raids as well as 20-man raids and 5-man dungeons. There's also things like war plots, and there'll be arena. So all of the goodness that people liked originally from WoW is being brought back in, as well as a whole ton of new stuff. So it's got that kind of timeless art style as well. If you did like that cartoony kind of WoW style where, you know, it never felt like it got old, but not kind of the new kind of art style that Guild Wars 2 has. So you should definitely check it out if you don't know about it.
And Pseudo, do you want to jump in with some thoughts?
Well, besides anyone who happens to be looking at my monitor, and for some reason my phone is still going off even though I've turned it off. This is great. But I have WildStar. I have an Orin and I have a Granok behind me. Yes, I am Team Exile. Don't hate on me. Just accept it. Yes, Team Exile all the way. But yeah, WildStar is actually what rekindled my desire to come back into MMOs. As Kai said, we're talking about bringing in 40-man raiding again. And it's one of those, oh man, 40-man raiding, would never want to do that again. And then all of a sudden it's like, the stress was there, but I want it back. So
Before we go down that particular rabbit hole, Gazimov.
Okay, so why I'm interested in WildStar. WildStar was announced Gamescom 2 years ago, back in 2010. 2010?
Yeah, I think
2010. So, and it was one of those ones that captured my interest very, very early on because of that FMV computer-generated trailer that they put together, the Blur trailer they call it, because there's this firm called Blur that do all of the trailers like that. Not to be confused with the band Blur, but that's another story. I'm kind of leaning more to the Dominion side, I've got to be honest with you. Mainly because I kind of like playing... I feel that because you've got the Cassians there, and they're like... they've got a very good accent, British accent, and they're not so much the bad guys as they're kind of like star-spanning empire, and we control the empire and we make sure that everything inside the empire is working properly and stuff like that. And I can completely get behind that. And I feel I have to play to a bit of trope there as well. But also it's a case of I really want to see this game actually work it's very different to other MMOs that I've been looking at, mainly because they are trying to push the genre, but they're not to go outside of the genre. A lot of people think that flexing the MMO genre at the moment means becoming a hybrid or something like that, or becoming an online RPG or something like that. Whereas Jeremy Gaffney and his crew of people basically think that if they follow a particular path and they try and push the genre in the right places, that they'll actually create a game that's interesting and compelling that people want to play. And their development team have been one of the most open teams that I've ever had the pleasure of interviewing and stuff. And I can really get behind them and what they're trying to achieve. And I think that's why, come spring next year, I shall be going out and buying myself a copy of WildStar and playing the hell out of it.
They're lovable. You can't not love them. The whole team has just this aura of just loving. You've got Frost, who everyone loves from watching the Vines and watching the Dev Speaks. And you've got Jeremy Gaffney, who's just the cuddliest person ever. And then you've got the community team, who all are just badasses. And there's like Team Pappy, and you just. It's like watching a reality TV show, watching them create the game. You just are connected with them, and I think that's why so many of us are in awe, because I personally, in 7 years, haven't felt that before.
And I'm going to jump in and toot a similar horn here. I'm very much excited about WildStar as the game for now. Other things may be down the future for myself, for Enigma. But WildStar are saying this is what we are, and we're happy to be this type of game. I am a raider at heart. I'm never going to be anything else. I'm the guy that loves the headache of the scheduling and who gets to go and who doesn't get to go and what's this DKP malarkey anyway, and all of that jazz. It's a treadmill, but I like parts of that treadmill. I like the sense of risk and reward, effort and achievement, and the sense of satisfaction you can get by putting a lot of effort in and coming out on top of the pile. But you know what? It isn't actually the desire to come out on top of the pile. It's the desire to have a go and have the opportunity to. And if we go into a raiding game and we end up mid-tier, low-tier, I'm going to look up to the people who've made it to a higher level and go, hey, there's something to aspire to. And so many games have lost that, what can I aspire to? There is what I'm going to refer to as special snowflake syndrome. Now, I'm probably going to alienate large swathes of the audience here, but possibly not.
It was nice knowing you, folks.
Well, we have strong opinions here, and I'm not going to shy away from them. I'll accept people telling me I'm wrong, however. You'd just better have an argument as to why. Special snowflake syndrome is when you say, I'd like all of the rewards, I'd like all of the benefits, I'd like shoulder pads that look like a banana. That's if you used to be a paladin back in the day. But I don't want to put in the effort. Now, effort need not be a time sink. Not solely. It should be difficulty. If you're able to combine a modicum of time to whatever level with excelling in a certain field, be it PvP, be it PvE, be it something that hasn't yet been invented yet that we'll be talking about in 73 shows' time, hopefully, you should have the right to excel and to go, this is what I've managed to do. And while you're having that journey, you should be having fun. You should be building long-term social relationships that, in an ideal world, exist inside and outside of the game. And they transcend the game. And that's one of the reasons why I, myself, love MMOs. I can't get that experience anywhere else. So, WildStar, they're going back to a number of basics and trying to do them really, really well. There is going to be raiding. They're on the record as saying it's going to be darned hard. Great. We're going to die lots. I'm not worried about that at all. They're talking about having to be good at PvP and PvE for that small 5% of gear. That came out in a recent tidbit in an interview. And there's a host of other things out there to get excited by. I love the idea on the raiding game of some content changing every single week. No, not a whole new raid. They haven't suddenly hung purple drapes inside the corridors. They're not going to look different when you walk down them. But they've talked in the past about things like a falling roof and a corridor being blocked, or they're talking about changing a boss mechanic. You might think back to Nefarian days and go, what colour drakes? Well, I'm hoping for something a little bit more than that, but time will tell. But it isn't just a raid game. It's or they're purporting it's going to be, a lots of things game. And what they actually deliver, well, as always, time will tell. But we've got a few more tidbits and interviews and news. There's a little bit of exciting stuff from PAX that I'm sure we may have to slip into the mix because it's just too interesting. And also some great stuff they're doing, like balancing out the payment model. For all the doomsayers that said, well, you can never ever have a subscription, it will die, it will flounder. Yet they've come up with a twist that seems to hit a few bases. We'll have to see. But I can witter on WildStar for an hour, and that's not the most interesting content in the world. So, I'm going to stop waving a WildStar flag for a moment and talking about what the game could be, but talk about what other people think the game actually is. So who wants to pick up and run with it from here?
Can I just quickly answer a question that was in the chat that was actually something that's a big hot topic? So Linoko actually asked whether in WildStar the telegraph, so you'll be able to change the colours for people who are colourblind. They actually got asked this question on the PAX panel, and yes, you will be able to. There are settings in the game where you'll be able to change it to a colour that suits you better, or if you don't like them at all, you can turn them off. So just like quickly answer that.
I have this really hard... How... Okay, I just know, Kaye, that your particular, telegraphs are going to be pink. I get this, and I understand this.
Of course they're going to be pink. What else colour would they be?
But I don't see how in a game, especially after you've seen some of the things that they've released video-wise for things like Stone Talon, etc., how you can survive in that kind of a game without telegraphs being on. It seems to be so built into the gameplay.
Crazy people.
Oh, I think that the whole telegraph system, you're going to need it for things like being able to do your dungeons and your raids and stuff like that. But I think if you're trying to do some machinima recording, or if you're in the raids trying to do machinima recording, or other situations like that, you're going to want to switch it off so that you can get everything set up, stuff like that. And the guys have already been really open and saying that they want to chuck in some machinima tools in there anyway. I think that's just one of those kind of things for that. I think that there was another kind of interesting thing that cropped up in chat as well, which was around the whole, okay, we know what the raiding scene is going to be like, but what about everyone who doesn't raid? And I think that's quite important, that we're not just talking about people wanting to do high-end dungeons, or veteran mode dungeons, as they call them in WildStar. They're not talking about people just doing raids. They're going to have kind of single to small group adventures with epic storylines that are going to go right the way through the world to carry on furthering the lore of the game. They're going to have housing, they're going to have crafting systems, they're going to have arena PvP, war plot PvP, stuff like that. One of Gaffney's often said quotes is that he says that the easiest way to set fire to a big pile of money is to build an MMO and not do the Elder game properly, and that means right across the board. So if you feel that your section of the Elder game isn't taken care of, then you should certainly shout to Team WildStar on Twitter and say, where's my bit of the Elder game? And they'll point you to it. There's also a really good diagram which has been created by Bram Hendricks. I can't remember his Twitter handle off the top of my head, but it's on the WildStar Google Plus page. Where he's got this huge layout of everything that there is available in Elder Game, and that's well worth taking a look at as well.
Yeah, that's definitely a lot of stuff. It's something like only like 20% of people who even try raids in MMOs. There are a lot of people who don't get that far. There are a lot of people who only PvP. I know, in fact, a lot of the people who are interested in WildStar, I know will only PvP. Shout out to Screenager. But I know they won't even step foot in a raid unless there's a chance they'll be able to get PvP gear. So if that's not taken care of, then obviously there'll be a big issue. But, there's also people who only like doing 5-man dungeons. There's only people who like doing 20-man raids. So far, I've asked all those questions, and WildStar are taking care of it. I think the only thing that is a little bit unsure of is how well they'll take care of people who only like to roleplay. But when me and Gazimov sat down with Jeremy at lunch, he did say that, they are working on it, and they're looking at all of the RP websites and seeing where they want to go with things and what tools they can give them to make that experience better. So they definitely considered it, and they are working on it. So as far as I can tell, they're looking at all of the spectrum of
And it's
Endgame or
worth
Elder
saying
Game.
as well, I'm aware that they've reached out to some of the leading lights in the roleplay community that's starting to spread around the game, and they're actually making sure to get opinions from the players on the ground of every single ilk. And it's a good example of why their community focus is really so hot. I haven't experienced that happening directly to the level that it seems to be anywhere else. Time will tell. I think the publishers, the producers in recent times are starting to realise that community engagement is actually a mantra to use to actually guide your decision-making process and not a slogan to slap onto your marketing box. And the more that publishers, producers, developers and everyone involved in this fabulous industry takes that on board, coupled with the more the community starts to regulate itself and say, hang on, we don't want trolls, we don't want this, we don't want the other. But as that starts to evolve, the better off the genre is going to be.
I want to throw out a question from our community that passed by a little while ago, but in my opinion, it was actually a really good question because while it can relate to WildStar, it can technically relate to any game that's coming out in the future. And that comes from Rar Machine. And Rar Machine was asking whether Carbine should launch, when it goes to launch WildStar, should they do it like Tor did? Being layers opening the floodgates bit by bit. If you actually remember back to Tor, how they let people in and how that all functioned. Or should they just say, open them up and say, have at it, folks? I mean, one of the biggest problems I see within MMOs today is almost like the 1 month you're in, it's something new, it's great, I'm bored now. Versus the when you're trying to get in, like the issue that has just happened with Final Fantasy where people were having server issues. And I mean, I still had someone say to me today that they had a problem getting onto the server as well. Yet I'm hearing some people saying, yeah, things are getting sorted, things are getting fixed. But, you know, when you start to let people into the game or you go to release a game, is there really a set method that's going to work?
I think just people need to stress test more. I know a lot of people saw the Final Fantasy Early Access as just another stress test. And that pretty much what it was. Like, people still couldn't get in. Even when the game properly launched, I couldn't get in. And still yesterday, I wanted to stream it and I couldn't log in. So I still think people need to regularly stress test, and even though Carbine have pushed back WildStar now to, well, not pushed it back, but kind of said that it's going to be more so spring 2014, they had still been doing stress tests only last month, and that's way ahead. And I think that's the right way to go about it, is that they're starting these kind of closed beta stress tests where they're having the normal closed beta testers and then suddenly adding loads of people, and if those people participate then they'll get into closed beta. I think that's a great way of not only building up the people in closed beta but also having a mass amount of people to strictly test the game at this early stage, because if they can get it right now it's only going to get more polished and better as it goes along. So hopefully they will get it done then, but I personally think they should just let everyone go in at once, because otherwise there's the whole I deserve to be in now, I bought it at the same time as everyone else, and like Misva says, you get the special snowflake syndrome and everyone thinks they deserve to be in.
With doing that, and just to go with that for you, Kai, the problem with doing something like that is you can actually end up in a situation where you have dead servers. So,
oh yeah, definitely.
It's kind of a matter of how, and this is something that will probably turn into its own topic in the future because it's the kind of stuff we're going to dig deep into. But how do you balance the getting people in, giving them the all access, you know, come on in and have fun, versus the come in, have fun, and actually have people around you to play? Because I still remember the Tor fiasco for me, where it was all of a sudden, hey, you guys are now going to be moving servers because you have nobody on your server. So it was one of those,
Okay, so I have a couple of points there. First of all, Old Git on chat pointed out something which I agree with completely, which is a real kind of technical limitation that Final Fantasy XIV and Square Enix just failed to contemplate completely. And I do want to kind of point the finger at them and say, oi guys, you messed up here. And that is on two counts. First of all, they don't have any kind of AFK kick, which is ludicrous. The only other game that I know of that doesn't have that is EVE Online. And EVE Online is designed to cater for huge amounts of players on a single server cluster. So special case. The second thing is they don't have a decent queuing system. So you manage to get through the whole era 1017, and there's like 250 people in the queue, top end. So they need to kind of increase that queue size to maybe 2,000-3,000 people, which is what it was when World of Warcraft originally came out. And really try and beef up how many people they let in the queue, so you at least have a place held there while you're waiting to get into the game. Because otherwise it's just retry. I don't know if you saw that video where someone set up a PS3 controller to a little machine just to hit the retry button again and again and again, which kind of emphasizes the point, really. I think that the whole idea of early access plus a full launch is the way to go. And I think having stress tests is a very strong idea, and they've already been doing that to a certain extent. I think one of the things they should avoid doing at all costs, however, is trying to do a region split, saying, okay, we're going to let US in 1 week, and then we're going to let EU in 2 weeks later. And the real reason I can point to that as being a bad idea is the recent Hearthstone launch. Hearthstone launched in the US to big fanfare and a load of streamers showing it and stuff like that. Hasn't even launched in the EU yet. And the hype in the EU and the enthusiasm for the game in the EU is already starting to really drop off. So any kind of hope and appeal that they tried to build up, and any kind of interest that they managed to garner at Gamescom with the Hearthstone stand, is already kind of tailing off dramatically in the EU because of that. And they've already got another card game, Hex, which is really kind of trying to chomp at their heels.
You've actually just hit on one of my biggest bugbears. And this is something that I'm an American. I live in the United Kingdom. I have seen what it's like to be on both sides of the pond. I've seen what it's like to be separated from friends, or have friends have to buy a game from me and then mail it to me so that I can actually join them on their servers. You know, I understand the difference, but doing that kind of separation, be it with launch or anything else, it actually really impacts the community. You know, we have a lot of amazing gamers here in Europe, and yet I can't help but feel like because I live in Europe, I'm a second-class gaming citizen in some cases. And that's not something that I think is fair. And it could be intentional. It could not be intentional. It's something I'm actually really looking into right now because I want to know. And, yeah, you've just hit a bugbear.
So...
And the thing is, it's not even as if it's like a big market thing, because US has 350 million population, so your gamers are going to be a percentage of that. EU has something like 705 million as a population, so everyone's saying, well, US is a bigger market. Nah, complete myth.
So let's jump back in with a thought and a quick couple of segues there. Suda gave a great example of the sort of topic we're going to be diving into in the future. What is the difference, both mindset and culturally, between an American, a US, an EU, an Oceanic, and other gamers? Is there one? Is it a myth? Is there any reason to actually segregate these sort of social groups and do things differently? Maybe there's some legal regulations that we're all falling foul of that get hidden in the background. With the show going forwards, this particular beta edition, I suppose, is a little more light-hearted, touching on a few topics, talking about a big event, but we're going to have a number of very specific shows going forwards. Coming up soon, we're going to have the Evolving MMO Landscape edition. We're going to have the WildStar show. We're going to have the EQ Next show. And we've got a host of other brickbats and bouquets up our sleeves as we go. But you can expect to see a mix, some general conversation, and in each show we're going to take one of these thorny issues and actually dissect it. We see a lot of people look at a release or look at some patch notes and say, hey, there's patch notes, and Fred is now 2 inches taller. Isn't that a fantastic change? And they move on to the next patch note or the next item on the agenda. Well, we're not quite going to be doing that. If for some bizarre reason the NPC Fred has been made 2 inches taller, we're going to ask why. We're going to ask what that does to the gameplay, what that does to the economy, why was this decision made in the first place, and really, what are all the interleaving parts of a complex MMO that make it hang together? Because when you see changes and balance changes and mechanical changes and social changes and 100 other types of change that I can't yet think of, these guys are not generally daft. There tend to be reasons why they're doing these things. And I often get the impression that the reasons they put out are often only a part of the story. They're often pushing and pulling levers within games to try and achieve other effects, or to change other parameters, or to change the player experience in a series of steps to get towards another goal. So this is going to be a place where we can dig into those thorny issues, where we can go a little bit deeper. And, well, where is that place? It's a weekly show that goes out on a Monday night, 8 o'clock, British Standard Time. It's an EU audience that everybody is welcome. But you're going to have to get up, does that make it 3 p.m, I believe, if you're on a PST clock? I'm sure someone in the channel will correct me if I'm incorrect. You can also find us on Twitter, MMOBuff, on Facebook, MMOBuff, on YouTube, MMOBuff, and where you're probably watching now, Twitch, on, yes, you guessed it, MMOBuff. Now, what we haven't done so far yet is really what we said we were going to do. You walk into Gamescom and it's all encompassing. You've got triple-decker stands in some places, you've got a hubbub of noise. Let's not dive so deep into a particular game, but let's take a guided tour through those halls on the entertainment side of things. What's it like? Why should or shouldn't someone go to Gamescom next year? Gazimov, you get that particular baton.
Okay, so going into Gamescom as a consumer, it's kind of a daunting experience. You have to get up at the crack of dawn. You want to stake out your hotel, first of all, to get the kind of cheapest deals. So as soon as they announce when the dates are, you want to make sure you're there, booking your hotel, booking your travel, stuff like that. Actually getting there, you want to make sure you're there as early as possible before they open the gates, because it's going to be one of those things where you're going to be queuing for ages just to get into the door. So you just want to make sure you're there as early as possible. You want to make sure you've got your mobile with you so you know where all the games are, because they do an app every year where you can find out where all the stands are, so you can plot your course to the various different games you want to see. You also want to be making sure you're following the people that you're interested in on Twitter, because quite often they'll do competitions and giveaways and stuff like that. And they'll say, like, the first 50 people to visit our stand will get something free. So you want to make sure you put a beeline in for that as well. But apart from that, be prepared to queue. And be prepared to queue a lot. I mean, one of the best ways of experiencing Gamescom is to consume it vicariously by following the streams and stuff like that, because you will be waiting in line to play a game for a very long time. And if you think about it, these are kind of enclosed spaces with people of questionable hygiene and even more questionable tolerance, and you'll be kind of like going, well, can I put up with this? But it's a great thing to experience, but it's definitely not the only way to experience gaming. It is, though, the biggest. So if you want to see the most impressive stands and stuff like that, then it's definitely somewhere to go.
I thought personally it was too busy on the press day on the show floor. Like, there was way too many people than were press, I'm telling you. I then saw pictures of what it was like on, like, the open days to the public, and I was like, I am not leaving the business area. No way. I'll get trampled. It'll be like the Lion King all over again. And I couldn't deal with it. And wear comfy shoes. That's my only advice. And just stay at home in your onesie and, like Gazimov said, watch it on
the thought
Twitch.
of 340,000 divided by the number of days gamers packed into a metal box when it's 30 degrees outside, it's interesting. There might be some footage emerging later on the site. We took a GoPro camera and kind of went crowd surfing. It's known as walking, but it's a very similar experience in those crowds. And we'll try and give people a feel of what it's really like when it's quite so packed. Okay, let's do a few quick thoughts. Most impressive stand. Who does that award go to? Pseudo.
Oh, of course you come to me first. Holy cow. Sorry, fangirl. It's got to be WildStar. You know, you can say what you want about any of the other things, like that lovely dubstep coming from behind WildStar, who decided to try to compete with WildStar with their loud oons. Yes, congratulations to them, but there was something revealed on those panels and all those little flags and stuff. And if you actually paid attention, you actually looked at what you were doing, you could see something that may not have been released yet.
And you definitely shouldn't watch Kai's face while Pseudo is talking right now, because that definitely won't give you a clue as to what it was.
But on top of that, they let people play new things, which is also wonderful. And you got 25 minutes, which of course made the queue really long. But at the same time, it was wonderful being tapped on the shoulder and a dev going, hey, let's talk about what you just went through. Tell me your thoughts. What did you think? And being able to have that kind of input. So, yeah, I'm going to have to just say WildStar. Sorry, fangirl.
Okay, let's bounce that back. Kai, most impressive.
I love the WildStar booth, but I've got to say, the one that really shocked me, I would say was impressive, was actually the Razer booth. I actually got to sit down with Min Langtang in the business area, and he would talk to me through why they did their booth this way. And the previous year, they had a massive skate park, they've had massive stages, they've had YouTubers throw stuff out. But this year, they had this black box with just Razer logos on it, and you walked into this black box, and they had trance music and flashy lights, and basically sat all the people that came in the box. They gave them a Razer t-shirt. Everyone put on their Razer t-shirts, and then they sat them all down. They all got to play. I can't remember what game it was. I think it might have been Firefall, but got to play it on the Razer blades. So everyone kind of got to have this big Razer experience by sitting there with a Razer mouse, a Razer blade, and a headset. And unless you review stuff like I do, a lot of people don't have the opportunity to get in contact with Razer stuff because it's so expensive, especially the Razer blade, which is £2,000. So I think that was just really good, and I thought that was a really nice touch that everyone walk in got a free t-shirt, and I really liked that they kind of made it more personal. So that was most impressive for me.
And I think they also rewarded the people that won on each particular round. I think some people walked away a little happier than others.
They did. Indeed, yeah. You also got an energy drink as well, which
for Gamescom, you need the energy drinks, not just the comfy shoes, but the energy drinks and the water.
Ooh. Gazimoff.
Yeah.
What did you walk away with memory-wise?
So, okay, so in terms of Gamescom stands, the WildStar stand was very impressive. The League of Legends stuff was huge as well, with the amount of stands that they had and seating for people to watch the various tournaments that were going on. And that was really impressive. I'm really kind of intrigued by how esports and League of Legends in particular is really taking off, and that's kind of a really interesting facet all on its own. Other stands that were really impressive, the Titanfall one with that huge Titan was really, really nice. And that was just the entrance to the kind of whole EA stand. And yeah, they had a whole sweeping thing around there. The other bits and pieces, I saw the wargaming stand with that huge airplane hanging from the ceiling was quite impressive as well. So, but I think the biggest thing that I always take away from my trip to Cologne is the currywurst. And it's every
the
time
food stand was most impressive.
Yeah, there's this currywurst, and every time I go to Cologne, I make sure to have at least one currywurst, and it was always really, really good.
Now,
really,
see, that's
really
unfair because we haven't even touched on food in Cologne yet. I mean, oh, sorry, I'm gonna get picked on here. Cologne? Am I saying it right? Cologne? But yeah. Well, I get picked on because, being a part of an international community, they always pick on me for saying it wrong. But we haven't even touched on the food.
And
all that meat on Wednesday.
meat is good, but I'm quite sure that's an hour-long show all by itself. What did I walk away with memory-wise from Gamescom? The way that some of the outfits were gearing up for spectator participation and esports, with the commentary, with the focus on making it an engaging and interactive viewer experience, I thought is a great, great continuation of the seeds that, in my opinion, StarCraft put down a little while ago. We had the emergence of Barcraft. And that momentum has never quite left the player community as esport becomes a big buzzword. Another future topic is probably what does it take to create an esport, and will we see it in an MMO? But we'll shelve that one for a later point in time. But aside from the places that really retained their ideas, Blizzard for their pluses and minuses, and they're so big everyone has an opinion about the company, really do know how to put on a show. They know how to have a sense of theatre. And that was obvious as you walked around their stands, the experience they created for the people that got to engage with them. And I must admit, I snuck off. I don't think it counts as MMOBuff duties, but I disappeared for a few hours, found myself a seat, and I watched the StarCraft finals, being a StarCraft fan. And I have to say that was a quite amazing and engaging experience. So if I have to pick one memory, it was sitting there in the crowd watching those finals. But overall, it's the sense of impact, the sense of excitement, the sense of theatre, and, yes, the olfactory memory of 340,000 gamers in a hot tin box.
There were some brilliant cosplayers. Don't forget those.
There were some brilliant cosplayers, there were some amazing PC mods, something else I liked to see as you went around some of the stands. I'm sure we can dig out some photos and put those on the MMOBuff site at some point. But I note the clock is ticking, we're emerging to an hour. So I'm going to bounce around all you fine folks once again. I'm going to ask you for any closing thoughts or words. We're probably going to wrap up what will be the VOD for future use, but we'll probably lurk for a little while and answer any questions should anyone have any. So I'm going to go the other way round this time and go, to my left, Pseudo.
Why me? Okay. So, yes, first off, we're not even getting close to the depth we want to go with these topics. So by all means, if there is something you want us to dig into, ask. If you want us to dig into payment models, if you want us to dig into the actual development process from concept to, the actual output of a game, if you want us to look into patches, if you want us to look into anything in depth, let me know. Yes, I am your community manager. You can find me. Oh, yes, we actually do have my Twitter handle on there. You can contact me that way, or you can send me an email at pseudo@MMOBuff.TV. Please, I want to hear from you. I want to know what it is that interests you, and I want to make certain that the community is handled properly. So, yes, bring me topics.
Fantastic. Kai.
I just want to leave it and thank everyone really for coming, and make sure you follow the Twitch stream so that you know when it's live, and make sure you go sub to the YouTube channel. If you only came through part of the show, you'll be able to check the full show and just stuff like that, just because it's nice to see the numbers growing and more people coming back, and then you'll get to know us and we'll get to know what you like, and we'll all get to know each other before Wildstar, and then hopefully see us all again.
And Gazimov.
Yep, I would say, as with Suda and Kairi, feel free to throw me questions. My Twitter handle should just be there-ish. So yeah, chuck me questions and I will happily respond to them. But yeah, if you've got anything, just feel free to email me. Me@Gamescom will get to me, and I will be happy to respond.
Don't run away if you're watching this live and have questions. We'll do our best to get through them. But if you're watching us on a VOD, if you're watching us on YouTube, we'll shortly be disappearing. So before we do, I have some thanks to give out to some awesome people. We have our wonderful producers, Kasabian and Shinogi, that are working away and toiling away in the background. You may have seen them in the chat, but they're busy doing stuff while we just get to talk. We also have a number of people in the background. We have Aiko doing a ton of research, and we've got a lot of people that have put a lot of support into this to help us get to this point. Yet we hope this is only the beginning, but how far we take this and where we can go with it, well, that's down to you guys. So please dig us out, email us, tweet us. You can also find us on voice@MMOBuff.TV. And whatever we can do for you, well, we're sure that we will. So, on that note, this is the inaugural, the beta, MMOBuff.TV, and this is Mispa, signing out. And that'll be a cut. Okay, guys, we all get to relax a touch now.
Happy.